Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're doing a deep dive into, well, the evolving world of crypto trading. And not just for the pros, but really for you, the curious learner. If you want to cut through some of the noise and, really get what's happening, our mission, basically, to pull out the most important bits from a whole stack of sources, give you a shortcut to feeling informed, and maybe find some less obvious truths, too. We've looked at insights from names you trust: Investopedia, Forbes Advisor, CNBC, Fidelity Digital Assets, CoinDesk, Bloomberg, and financial publications like FinTech Global Insights. So, yeah, a lot to draw from.
And what's really fascinating looking at sources like Investopedia and Forbes Advisor is how they both stress that education and strategic planning are just absolutely essential. It's not about making wild guesses, right? It's about building a solid framework.
That's a really strong point. Investopedia, for example, they talk about mastering market structure, understanding volatility, which is huge in crypto, uh, risk protection, and wallet safety. Those are like non-negotiables. And then Forbes Advisor kind of doubles down on that, adding long-term thinking, technical analysis, and crucially, emotional control.
Right. And that emotional part, it's less about pure willpower in a 247 market. It's more about having strategies in place before the pressure hits, like setting stop losses ahead of time.
Yeah, exactly. So you're not making decisions when you're, stressed or emotional.
And connecting that to the bigger picture, you see sources like Fidelity Digital Assets and CoinDesk doing deep research. They look at how these basics apply to portfolio strategies, different blockchain uses, and how crypto is sort of merging with traditional finance. It's about seeing the whole ecosystem, really.
Okay, so we've got the foundations, the mindset, the big picture. But imagine someone listening is thinking, okay, great theory, but how do I actually do this without it taking over my life?
And that's where insights from places like CNBC on building a high-performing trading routine get really interesting. They suggest some really practical steps, like set a fixed schedule. You don't need to be glued to the screen 24/7. Focus on maybe just 2 or 3 key indicators, things like RSI, MCD, maybe volume.
Yeah, tools to gauge trends without drowning in data.
Exactly. And track your results diligently. Critically, always use stop losses to protect your capital. It's this cycle, right? Learn, adjust, repeat, maybe do monthly reviews to fine-tune things.
Which brings up a really important question. Why focus on this right now? Well, the sources are pretty clear. Crypto seems to be hitting a major adoption phase. It's a significant shift from the early days.
And you can see the drivers, can't you? Bloomberg, CNBC, Fidelity, they all point to similar things, like the SEC approving Bitcoin ETFs in 2024. That really opened the floodgates for more traditional investment.
A big legitimacy boost, for sure. And global regulators. They're actively building frameworks now, trying to make adoption safer. Plus, the April 2024 Bitcoin halving that automatically cut the supply of new Bitcoin right when demand is growing.
Exactly. Basic supply and demand kicking in. And all this means we're seeing more long-term holders than ever. It suggests less pure speculation, maybe more structure developing in the market. Crypto's kind of growing up. But look, it can still feel pretty complex to navigate. So the question becomes, how do you handle this new maturity without getting totally lost?
Right. And that's where some sources like Forbes Advisor and FinTech Global Insights are noticing an interesting trend. Platforms are popping up that try to bridge that gap between, complexity and usability for individual investors.
Yeah.
Nueva Wealth is one they mentioned as a good example of this new approach.
Mhm.
Sources seem to like how it combines speed-like, fast execution with actual one-on-one mentorship. It offers live trading, direct execution. You get a dedicated account manager.
So actual human support.
Yeah, exactly. A user-friendly interface too, which helps. And interestingly, access to institutional-grade OTC-level pricing.
OTC, that's over the counter, right? Like direct trades, often for big players, getting better prices.
Precisely. And Nueva Wealth apparently brings that kind of access down to the individual level, which is pretty significant.
And that whole approach seems designed to tackle that common problem.
Yeah.
New traders feeling kind of alone and overwhelmed. It focuses on strategy, guidance, making sophisticated stuff more accessible.
So if we boil it all down, the final takeaway from these sources seems to be this. If you felt you missed earlier waves in crypto, maybe the next big opportunity is unfolding right now. And platforms like Nueva Wealth, according to these sources, mean you don't have to go it alone. You don't necessarily need deep technical knowledge to start. You get real-time access, personal guidance, even that institutional-grade pricing, all sort of tailored for you, the individual investor.
So it really makes you think, doesn't it? What does this all mean for your next steps? How might a more structured approach, maybe combined with that kind of personalized support, change how you engage with this whole evolving financial landscape.